Within the past few months, a British expat living and working in Canada, Lizzie Taylor, known on the internet as Heidi Ho, has compiled a very useful analysis of all the other claimed sightings of Madeleine that week. Here are some extracts from her article, based on extensive analysis of all the relevant witness statements. Like everyone else, I once believed that Madeleine was seen during the holidays, as there were so many people that claimed to have seen her. As I started to collate the witness statements and scrutinise each one, I realised that apart from Fatima de Silva, who saw Madeleine and the family outside the apartment one day, there was not one statement that had a similar degree of credibility. I thought that the possibility of something happening to Madeleine prior to Thursday would be impossible, but after reading all the statements, every one, except Fatima, allows for doubt. Some were very obviously mistaken. She then goes on to list other witness statements from people I've not mentioned so far. Here is Lizzie Taylor's list and her comments. Cecilia Diaz Firmino, receptionist at Millennium, described a shy Madeleine and saw them on days they were not at restaurant. Therefore, not proof that she saw Madeleine. She may have seen one of the other tapas children. Geronimo Salcedes, tapas barman, admits to not being able to recognise if it was Madeleine. Luisa Ana de Nona de Azevedo Coutinho, receptionist, claims to have seen Madeleine with the McCanns' friend Dr. Russell O'Brien, but his daughter was not in the creche that morning and looks very similar to Madeleine, so likely mistaken. Georgina Jackson, tennis instructor, was non-specific about seeing Madeleine, only that she was part of the group for that morning. Charlotte Pennington, creche nanny. We've already covered Charlotte Pennington earlier in the film. Diaz Romao claimed seeing Madeleine at times she was not there, according to the creche record. Emma Wilding did not know Madeleine well and makes incorrect statement about seeing Jerry. Paula Cristina de Costa Vieira, cleaner, says she saw Madeleine McCann twice leaving the Millennium at about 9:30 to 10 a.m, but they didn't go to the Millennium for breakfast. Non-specific comments that do not confirm Madeleine's presence were made by Jez Wilkins, Stephen Carpenter and Daniel Stuck. So what about that one statement that Lizzie Taylor thinks may be credible, one by Fatima Maria Serafim de Silva Espada, the daughter of one of the cleaners? She says that she saw the McCanns and their 3 children. Let's look at the relevant extract from her statement, and let's note that this particular alleged sighting took place on the Sunday, and see what a tremendous amount of specific detail she gives to the police as she unfolds what she saw. She states that this took place on Sunday the 29th of April, just before she finished her morning shift at 13:30, as she had the afternoon off that day. At about 13:15 she went to help her mother, who was cleaning apartment 5I of the same block, situated on the first floor. She clearly remembers seeing the girl, accompanied by her siblings and mother, leave their apartment 5A and walk to the stairs leading to the floor above. She was very close to them, at a distance of about 1 metre, observing their movements for a few moments, because she was charmed by them. Madeleine led the way with a plate, perhaps plastic, in her hand, bearing a piece of bread. As regards the clothes she was wearing, she only remembers a skirt, but cannot recall its description. She noted, because she thought them nice, the type of shoes she was wearing, tennis shoes, light in colour she thinks, which had little lights along the soles, which lit up each time she stepped on the ground. Her siblings followed behind her, wearing the same kind of shoes, and each holding a piece of bread in their hands. Their mother followed behind them without holding their hands. She seemed to remember the mother was also carrying a plate. Moments afterwards, perhaps the time it took to close the apartment door, the father came out and also headed to the apartment upstairs. When asked, she does not remember whether the father pulled the door closed or locked it with a key. So here we have a statement which I suggest clearly is credible. It is not vague, it does not look contrived. Moreover, she sees all 5 members of the family together, and after that I would contend that no one ever sees all 3 children together that week. What about her shoes? Unfortunately, we do not see these in the last photo, so we don't know if they are the same ones as this cleaner describes. However, we do have the photos taken what I think was the day before. And on this one, the playground picture, we can see that Madeleine is indeed wearing exactly the same shoes as described by the cleaner. In the last photo, Madeleine is wearing a pink dress. The cleaner remembers Madeleine wearing a skirt, she thinks, but can't remember what colour it was. It's easy to confuse a dress with a skirt. This incident happens at about 1:15 p.m. on the Sunday. Is it possible that Madeleine was already in the clothes in which she is seen in the last photo? I think it is. So, in the statement of Luisa Anacotino, we have a detailed, wholly credible statement that is also fully consistent with the last photo having been taken about an hour later by the pool, after lunch on the Sunday. The clarity and detail of this witness statement shows up the other statements from the Ocean Club staff for what they are: vague statements with no detail and therefore lacking credibility. So, if this hypothesis is correct, it means that the creche records, which show Madeleine as being in the creche for several hours each day from Sunday through to the Thursday, cannot be correct. I am sure this will be cited by some as strong evidence which refutes the hypothesis in this film. If we look closely at the records, we see that Madeleine is being signed into the creche after some children, but before others. The arrival and leaving times are all sequential, and there are clearly a number of different parents' signatures on the sheets, many of whom would not know the McCanns. So, if these records were forged, it means they were most likely forged at the times the creches were being held. In other words, Madeleine's name entered onto the sheet at the times stated, but just with her not being present. We see that on most occasions, Madeleine is signed into and out of the Ocean Club reception creche nearly always exactly 5 minutes after Sean and Amelie are signed into and out of their creche at the tapas area. So we can assume from this that the McCanns dropped the twins off at the tapas creche, then walked Madeleine along to the Ocean Club reception creche, thus Madeleine being signed in 5 minutes after the twins. But wouldn't you have thought that when collecting the 3 children, that Madeleine would always be collected first, then the twins 5 minutes later? The children were, as far as we know, always dropped off or collected by just one parent. So when collecting the 3 children, if the twins are collected first, it means the parent would have to walk with 2 two-year-old children all the way to the other creche, collect Madeleine, then walk all the way back to the apartment. Wouldn't you think they would collect Madeleine first to save trekking the twins to the other creche and back? And I don't think it's possible that they took the twins back to the apartment first, because there wasn't enough time to do that within just 5 minutes. I suggest, from these records, that the McCanns probably were putting their twins into the tapas creche and collecting them from the tapas creche. But I propose that as soon as they were dropped off or collected, one of the McCanns, Kate or Jerry, would walk to the Ocean Club creche to sign Madeleine in or out, even though she wasn't there. This would explain why Madeleine is nearly always signed in and out 5 minutes after the twins. If this is indeed the case, it means that it would have been much easier to carry this off if the nanny in charge, i.e. Kat Baker, was helping them to sign a child in and out that was not present. And we know that Kat Baker has always remained close to the McCanns and visited them at key times at their home in the UK. There was an interesting interview about Kat Baker given by her Nani Cavallo in TV Mais on the 18th of November 2008. Here are some excerpts from what he said. Some have doubts about the Ocean Club's creche records. The doubts increase if we pay attention to the depositions of Maddie's last nanny, Kat Baker. The statements that the nanny gave to the police raised doubts. When re-questioned in England, she corrected several statements that she had given in Portugal. She was allowed to refresh her memory from her previous statements. Kat Baker says she remembers extraordinary details about the day Madeleine was reported missing, but says she doesn't remember who picked up Maddie and at what time. The Portuguese police called in calligraphy experts. These experts found discrepancies in the handwritings. Just one of the doubts that the analysts raise concerns the identity of those doing the form filling and their signatures in the form. The nanny's signature and her handwriting appear on the sheet where only the parents were supposed to sign. Did no one notice this? One more curiosity about Kate McCann's purported signatures in the creche records is this statement in her book, Madeleine, about the fact that ever since she had got married, she had always used her maiden name. On the 4th of May 2007, the date after Madeleine was reported missing, I became Kate McCann. According to my passport, driving licence and bank account, I was Kate Healy. I hadn't kept my maiden name for any particular reason. It was just who I was and who I'd always been. But when Madeleine was taken, the press automatically referred to me as Kate McCann, and Kate McCann I have been ever since. Overnight our old life had gone and I'd become a different person. If that really is the case, then we must ask why her signature in the creche records on every day except one was K. McCann and not K. Healy. So to summarise, these creche records are so unreliable and contradictory, so much so that the suspicion of deliberate forgery arises. So they cannot be used as any kind of conclusive evidence that Madeleine really was in that creche. I have mentioned the possibility that some witnesses may well have confused Madeleine with another child. There was indeed one child on that holiday, a child of one of the McCanns' Tapas 7 friends who was also, like Madeleine, 3 years old and who looked very similar to Madeleine. And that was Ella, the daughter of Dr. Russell O'Brien. Moreover, as we saw earlier, Ellie was also on Madeleine's lobster creche group. Here is a most curious incident which I hope to explore further in my next film about Madeleine. This is the statement of one of the receptionists at the Ocean Club, Louis Anna Coutinho. She gave evidence of one of the Tapas 7 group visiting the Ocean Club reception area on the evening of Sunday the 29th of April and making an unusual demand for a block booking of the tapas bar for the McCanns and their group, so that they would be guaranteed a place there every evening. There are many inexplicable and contradictory features about this request, but for now let's look very closely at what the receptionist says in her statement. She has been a receptionist at the garden for 1 year, but has worked there previously. The Ocean Club Garden reception has less functions than the main reception and deals with subjects relating to activities, the pool, tennis, etc. and excursions. She points out that the family in question came via Mark Warner and this company takes care of all relations with clients and there is practically no contact between the clients and reception. She adds that this family, McCann, like all Mark Warner clients, have half board, that is breakfast and dinner. For dinner the guests could choose between 2 restaurants, the Tapas and the Millennium. The first being a la carte and the second a buffet service. Clients make their choice not only because of the food but because of the proximity of the restaurant to their accommodation. She says that the guests told her that the tapas was of better quality, but it was difficult to reserve there as a Mark Warner guest as the Mark Warner daily quota was of only 20. In this concrete case, the reasonable option was the tapas, as the distance was only 40 metres from the accommodation, as opposed to 200 metres from the Millennium. She remembers that on Sunday the 29th of April, one of the individuals of the group arrived with the child Madeleine McCann. She does not know his name and can only say that he was male and tall and thin, and that he approached her to request a booking for the whole group for the whole week and always at 20:30. When questioned, she confirms that the man was not the father of the girl, but one of the members of the group whom was often seen in his company. The man justified his request by saying that the group had many small children whom they would leave alone when they went to dine. She said that at intervals some two parents would go to the apartments to see if everything was okay. The deponent made some comments about the request, saying that the tapas received many requests and that Mark Warner only had a quota of 20 per day, but upon the insistence of the guest she managed to make the bookings requested. She confirms that it was possible to see the apartment from the restaurant, including the window of the sitting room. She does not know in which bedroom the children were sleeping, but upon being informed that it was on the opposite side of the apartment, she confirmed that it would be completely out of sight from anyone at the restaurant, that the most viable solution would be to leave the children with a babysitter, which is the procedure normally adopted by clients. Regarding the question as to the availability of the babysitting service between 19:30 and 23:30, she confirms that the service exists and that it is free of charge. When questioned, she says that she does not understand, as the service is free, why the parents of Madeleine McCann did not use it. When asked, she says that the contact with this family was normal, like with other clients, and describes them as nice. With regard to the date of the disappearance, she says that she worked from 9 o'clock till 1700 hours and only returned at 8 a.m. on the 4th of May. It was on this day at 08:30 when she arrived that she was informed about the disappearance by colleagues. She only knows what third parties have told her and from what she has seen in the press. She never saw anything strange. During this interview, she provided a book with the reservations for the tapas restaurant. Now, there is only one of the tapas group of doctors who fits the description of being tall and thin, and that's Dr. Russell O'Brien, father of Ella. The likelihood is that it was him who spoke to Miss Louisa Anna Coutinho, but the receptionist says that it was Madeleine McCann with him. Is it not much more likely that this girl with him was his own daughter, Ella? By all accounts, she looked very similar to Madeleine. Could it be that the receptionist and maybe several other staff all mistook Ella for Madeleine? After all, I am suggesting that Ella was there for the rest of that week, but that Madeleine was not. All I can say now is that I think we must regard it as a distinct possibility. So I conclude with a last look at the fabled last photo. I've shown that there is a high probability that this photo was taken not on Thursday the 3rd of May as claimed by the McCanns, but 4 days earlier on the Sunday lunchtime that week. And as we have seen just now, credible evidence that Madeleine McCann was alive after then is wholly lacking. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, that explains why no DNA of Madeleine was found in the McCann's apartment. If Madeleine McCann died, say, late on Sunday, that explains why there are no photographs of Madeleine that week, apart from 5 taken on the day of arrival and the last photo. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, that might well explain why the tennis balls photo might be a forgery. It was supposed to have been taken on either the Tuesday or the Thursday, but that's impossible if something had already happened to Madeleine. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, then the McCann group would have had time to plan the elaborate abduction hoax that I described in Phantoms. If Madeleine died, say, late on Sunday, that could help to explain why certain people in Praia da Luz the very next day contacted Robert Murat, who was then staying with relatives in Devon, England, and summoned him back to Praia da Luz, where his mother, Jennifer Murat, had been living for many years. Murat immediately booked a flight and rushed back from England, taking the 1,500-mile flight to Praia da Luz on the very next morning, Tuesday, leaving home at 5 a.m. Perhaps an abduction hoax needed time to be planned. The international media frenzy that erupted on the morning of the 4th of May quite probably also had to be planned. And here I bring in some words from Tanya Cardigan, one of the leading statement analysts in the country, and who works closely with internationally known pioneer of statement analysis, Peter Hyatt. She has made a special study of the McCann case, focusing on the McCann's strange use of language, which she says provides valuable clues as to what really happened to Madeleine. She has written, "What I believe may have happened to Madeleine McCann. I believe that Madeleine died before Thursday the 3rd of May. That the odour of a corpse was found behind the sofa means she must have lain there for at least 90 minutes, since that is how long, depending on the manner of death and the environmental conditions, the odour takes to develop sufficiently for a dog to detect it once the body has been removed. This would blow away the McCanns' claims of 30-minute checks, since they clearly didn't notice her missing for at least 90 minutes. There is also the fact that the apartment was almost certainly forensically cleaned. There was no DNA to show that Madeleine was even there. Forensics look for what is there that shouldn't be, and just as importantly, what isn't there that should be. This tells me that time had to be taken to clean the apartment, something not possible in the time frames given for Thursday the 3rd of May. This tells me Maddie died sometime earlier in the week. Looking at the statements and how much is written concerning each day of the trip, I and others have noticed there seems to be a lot missing from the Monday of that week. We go from quite detailed statements about what happened before Monday to obfuscation and lots of "I can't remembers." This makes that day sensitive, requiring further information as to why the sensitivity. If she died much earlier in the week, then that leaves plenty of time for the clean-up, washing clothes and hiding of the body. Why did the McCanns act the way they did? Innocent parents act a specific and expected way. Guilty parents also act a specific and expected way. The two are mutually exclusive. Innocent parents, had there been an accident, would have called 999, even if she was long dead. Parents act in denial and will always hope for a miracle. But the fact that they didn't call 999 means that there was something they could not explain away as accidental. This could be current injuries, old and healing injuries, evidence of sedation, or signs of abuse. If Madeleine died, say, within 24 hours of the time the last photo was taken on Sunday, as I suggest, so much about this strange case can be explained. As I showed in my first Madeleine film, the cadaver dogs of Martin Grime proved that someone had died in the McCann's apartment, and I propose that could only have been Madeleine McCann. How she died is another matter. Gonçalo Amaral, the Portuguese investigation coordinator, thought it may have been an accident, falling off a sofa maybe. According to some, there is a certain amount of circumstantial evidence that an overdose of sedative drugs might have caused or contributed towards Madeleine's death. Another possibility is that someone, not necessarily one of the McCanns, might have assaulted her and killed her. These and other matters I hope to cover in my next film. Another thing that might be baffling you is that if all this is true, how could they possibly get away with it? Why would powerful establishment people and organisations involve themselves in covering up what looks like is straightforward crime? This is another very important question, which will be addressed in the next film. But just as a starter to get you thinking, here is a list of the very noteworthy people who were staying at the unassuming Ocean Club during that week. I mentioned at the very beginning that Clarence Mitchell seemed to have the power to plant any story he wished in any mainstream newspaper. You might ask, how the hell is it possible for someone to be able to do this? It is rumoured that Mitchell is a very high-up operative working for MI5. There have also been frequent suggestions that every British mainstream newspaper publication has MI5 operatives embedded in key positions in their editorial staff. If so, I would suggest that Mitchell is in fact one of the puppet masters of these operatives, giving him the outrageous power to have printed what he wants and get away with it. Now, it's easy to get enraged about people like Mitchell and focus our anger towards him. But in fact, he himself is probably just a puppet. A puppet of a system and a group of powerful people which is so full of corruption, so rancid to the core, so full of lies and deceit, that the only thing holding this cesspit together is the continual propagation of more lies which are used to plaster over the cracks and keep the cesspit in one piece. In my next film, I intend to dive into this cesspit and see if I can expose more by addressing the biggest questions of all, which are, assuming Madeleine died, how did she die, and why was it covered up by the British establishment?